Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today, we're going to talk about Bryan Danielson going nose to nose with CM Punk and firing him. Well, it didn't quite happen that way. But if you saw the internet, you think that's what happened. Let's get into what actually occurred. And we're also going to get into some of the things that people are saying about Bryan Danielson. And we'll just get there when we get there. Let's start. Step 1, what happened? So, Danielson is now a member of the disciplinary committee in AEW. We get this from Fightful Select. I am reading basically a summary from Wrestle Purists. So it says, Fightful Select has now provided additional insight into who was involved in the making decision to terminate Punk's contract. First reporting that Megha Parekh, who was recently reported to have stepped back from her duties as AEW Chief Legal Officer, was not involved in the decision, with AEW General Counsel Chris Peck and his attorney taking up 2 of the 3 spots on the committee. The third name on the committee is likely to grab headlines, as the report also notes that Bryan Danielson headed up the committee, and the eventual decision was one that felt as though he had to make, with this being a continuation of his AEW duties that also see him hand out fines if necessary. All right, now we're going to get into, I guess they're going to directly quote Fightful Select and then get into Bryan Danielson's very odd tweet that popped up shortly, either before or shortly after CM Punk ended up at Survivor Series. So here is directly from Fightful Select. It says, there was one long-respected member of AEW talent roster that was involved in Bryan Danielson. When asking sources on the AEW roster about his inclusion, one called him, quote, appropriate moral compass who exemplifies objectivity, and said that he effectively headed up and was the face of the disciplinary committee. Danielson was said to have spoken to the roster when addressing them about Punk's termination, and noted that the decision was a particularly hard one. He cited the positives that Punk brought to his long-standing friendship with Punk, but said that it was a decision that had to be made. All right. So then Danielson tweeted out very randomly and suspiciously on November 27th, my dad once told me the right thing is often the hardest thing to do. It won't always make the most money. It won't always be the most popular, but it's the right thing. And he hashtag AEW with a heart. So this is an interesting situation. And then they continue saying, Punk's thoughts on the matter. The report mentions that those that Fightful had spoken to believe Punk was aware by now that Danielson was a part of said committee, as many of his friends were included in the meeting where Danielson addressed them. So Punk likely knows that Danielson was a part of this committee. All right. So now we have everybody running around on Twitter for the first time ever really attacking Bryan Danielson, and people are calling him a stooge for the office. People are questioning whether Tony Khan is even a competent boss. Why is he not on the disciplinary committee? I'm going to try to smooth some of these things over. Explain some things. One, I'm going to admit my bias towards Bryan Danielson. I've said before, there ain't much he could do outside of molesting a child or raping somebody or, committing mass murder that I won't just forgive because Bryan Danielson is very cool. So I really don't have strong feelings one way or the other about Danielson being the guy who kind of made the decision to recommend that Tony Khan fire CM Punk. So here's my opinion on that. Because a lot of people have said, why is an active talent making that decision? And that is the question. All right. Of all the critiques that I've seen so far, that's the best one. People who are asking, why is an active talent doing this? Somebody who's retired? Yes. How about your head of talent relations, who was supposed to be Christopher Daniels, right? Why was he not the liaison between the talent and the office? Why was he not the guy on a disciplinary committee? That's who is supposed to be on a disciplinary committee, is you should have somebody from talent relations. Now, Danielson being IAB, the Internal Affairs Bureau, him being, in AEW is humorous. Him being like the judge of wrestlers court, like a legit shoot wrestlers court, It's very interesting. It's very entertaining. It's humorous. But he is, by, a full-time performer. And it's probably not the best for him to be there. If he were retired, I don't think you could pick anybody better. I think he ended up in this position specifically because he had the respect of the people involved. And he was not considered a stooge for the people involved. If you guys remember, Christopher Daniels, who, like, as long as last I checked, he was still the head of talent relations in AEW. He was considered a stooge for the elite. And CM Punk banned him from being on Collision. I'm pretty sure you could probably find that story. All right. Christopher Daniels, if he was involved with this, CM Punk would not have led any credibility to that commission. He wouldn't have thought anything. He thought it was just the elite doing what they do. For it to have any credibility, there had to be somebody that he trusted to make that decision. All right. And if Danielson is that guy, because why wouldn't he be? I haven't heard anything to suggest that he wouldn't be a trustworthy guy for this commission. Then that was a way to get everybody to understand the seriousness of it and to lend credibility to the investigation. Because if you have somebody that everybody involved trusts, and they're one of the people involved in the investigation, you lead credibility to the investigation. Therefore, you get fewer arguments about what comes out of the investigation. All right. Now, some people have said why Tony Khan is not in it. Well, Tony Khan is the guy ultimately that has to make a decision, but he also has a lot of other duties. He's going to dictate some of these duties out to other people, which is the smart thing to do. Now, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of folks who are really in love with bureaucracy. Why don't they have human resources? It's like, what do you need like full-time human resources for? This ain't an office job. Like it's not like a huge corporation or anything like that. And even the secret is a lot of human resources is completely and totally unnecessary, if you're being honest. But you don't need like a huge human resources department. But Tony Khan cannot be involved with the investigation. He should get a report. You have all these people. So he has a 3-person board that he says, you guys investigate this thing, and then you give me a report, whether it's written or whether it's verbal, whether it's a screen or whatever. Recommend something. So that means that Danielson and these 2 other guys, they sat down, they went through the evidence. Maybe they did some interviews. Maybe they watched some footage. Who knows what else happened. They probably talked to all the principals in the situation. And then they came up with a report and a recommendation that they submitted to Tony Khan, and then left it to Tony Khan to make the decision. Because it's Tony Khan's fucking company. So technically, despite the fact that I kind of, and everybody's making fun of Danielson, Tony Khan has to make the decision to fire CM Punk or not. He can accept the recommendation or not. So he accepted the recommendation based off the evidence that these guys saw. Now, we don't know what they saw, but everybody has already given them credibility by saying these guys are not stooges for the office. They're not stooges for the elite. They're not, CM Punk, friends or anything like that. These guys, we trust them. They're objective. Whatever shakes out is going to be the right thing. And so this is what shook out of it. Now, this is the first time, probably ever, I've heard so many fans be angry at Bryan Danielson. And I say, I don't understand what you're mad at Danielson for. All right. If this is a huge responsibility that was dumped onto him to try to clean up this mess. My only criticism is, why did he wash the dishes but didn't mop the floor? Why didn't he do anything with the fucking other guys? Now, yes, we know that Jungle Boy was suspended. We know that. But there should have been other types of these. There's a lot of guys back there that's been doing stuff that they had no business doing. You know, if you're going to be the one cleaning up, you're going to be walking around with a badge and a baton. You know, you're going to be the hall monitor. Then you have to make sure everybody's playing by the same rules. You know, so I felt like he should have been smart enough, and everybody should have been smart enough to realize that Jungle Boy was just a proxy for the elite. You know, it was an attack by the elite through Jungle Boy. And I think most everybody can accept that, knowing that Jungle Boy is a stooge for the elite. All right. And so we definitely should have done something, but maybe they say, look, there was no connection between the two. You know, there's no way of proving that they put him up to it or whatever the case may be. Maybe he's just a natural dickhead, and that's just kind of how it is. Okay. But I don't look at this as being Danielson's fault. You know, he's a guy who's, you know, near retirement anyway. He's still wrestling, but he's near retirement. He's worked in the office in WWE. He's now apparently got one foot in the office in AEW. Nobody can argue that he's not a credible person for this job. But ultimately, he can't make the decision alone. That's why the legal guys are there. The legal guys are now going to break down the contracts, what you can do to a talent, what you can't do. You know, how can we get out of this contract? You know, can we get this guy to sign an NDA? Can we, you know, do we have to buy him out? How does this work? You know? They have to work that part out. You have to also work out whether, you know, there might be some criminal matters involved with it. You know? So there's other things that is tied up in this. But I'm looking at it and I'm saying it doesn't seem out of the ordinary to me. You know, if you ever worked in a big company, the COO, the chief financial officer, the CEO, they don't get involved with a lot of the internal investigations. They get a report. And then they find out that somebody's being investigated for some reason. They get a report, and then they act on the report. That's what happens. So Tony Khan not being in the muck and the mire, that's not out of the ordinary. He's running other operations in the company. He's leaving these guys to doing what they do. And it also adds some credibility, especially in this particular circumstance, because Tony Khan was a little too buddy-buddy with both the Elite and with CM Punk. So it kept Tony Khan fairly neutral in this scenario, because he's not being twisted one way or the other. He's just getting a report from a neutral party or an objective party, or at least a party that has credibility. And he is saying, based off this document or whatever, this verbal report that I was given, this is the right option for us to take. And I think it was the right option. I think firing CM Punk was the right thing to do. Firing Jack Perry should have been the right thing to do. That's why I say, why did you wash the dishes? You didn't mop the floor. You know, like, he should have been fired too. He picked the fight. He started it. If you're going to cost yourself a lot of money by firing CM Punk, you should have cost yourself a little bit of money by getting rid of Jack Perry. All right. So, kind of silly, right? But I think ultimately the decision that was made was best for CM Punk and best for AEW. And Danielson, as his friend, probably knew that. Probably knew they got to get this guy out of here. You know, he's stressed out. He's constantly getting into it with these guys. The bitterness is growing. Giving him his own show and isolating him on this show with only the people that he wanted to work with was causing other kinds of problems. Because now we're seeing, as we, watch things unfold, that there's supposedly a cadre of ex-WWE talent that think they're too good for AEW. And all of these guys wanted to work Collision with CM Punk. So you had Miro and Andrade and Malachi Black and a bunch of other people were Collision only guys. And then there was Punk. And that was sort of his crew. And then you got, your Ricky Starks and some of the other guys, some of the young guys that he was cultivating. and they were pro-Punk, and then they were all going to get shipped off to this penal colony called Collision. And then what? And then what? How long was that really going to work? Especially when, again, they had to work together for pay-per-views and stuff like this. It was the right decision for everybody involved. And I respect it. I respect the decision. I'm glad we just finally now seeing who was a part of this thing and how it shook out. Because it took forever for this stuff to come out. For this level of transparency, it took forever. Why did it take for, CM Punk to sign with WWE before people started doing some more digging? We could have found this out months ago, as far as I could tell. But we finally know what's going on. But it seems pretty logical to me. I would think you would have head of talent relations in there. Maybe Danielson is talent relations. I would imagine so, if the talent trusts him and he's going to be the voice of the talent in these discussions or whatever, or the guy, meeting out fines and all this kind of stuff. But I don't see why people are attacking Bryan Danielson. To me, that just goes, people think that he's a stooge. How is he he's not informing on people, he was asked to chair a disciplinary committee because he's fairly objective, not because this is what the office wanted. The office wanted to keep CM Punk. They probably were looking for reasons to not fire him. And he has to make the decision that this is what he's not making a pro-company decision. This is anti-company. This devastated AEW. See, sometimes people get to thinking about, everything before the outcome. All right? The outcome is what matters. In this situation, Danielson was being asked to make a decision that ultimately wrecked AEW financially. Their TV ratings have gone down. Their attendance have gone down. Their merchandise sales have gone down because they fired CM Punk. That's not a pro-company decision. All right? That's what you would do if you were actively trying to kill the fucking company. Firing your biggest star. But it was necessary. So, I don't look at it like he's a stooge, man. I think sometimes people they're immature. It's a very mature job because people are not going to like you. Because everybody wants to be anti-authority until shit jumps off. Then somebody wishes somebody had gotten involved. Somebody needs to do something. And then as soon as somebody's like, well, maybe I'll do something. You're a stooge. You're a cop. It's like, well, either you want the Wild West or you don't. The AEW fan base, they apparently don't like the Wild West concept because that might mean CM Punk beating up somebody every week. But now they don't like the idea of Danielson, back there playing hall monitor either. Get over it, bro. It's more professional for somebody to be in that position, to mete out the fines, do the investigations, and it has to be somebody that the talent can trust and think that this stuff that's not arbitrary, that he's only going to pick on his friends, or he's going to pick on people that he don't like, or whatever the case may be. The more credibility the person that is involved with that has, the better. And who in that locker room has more credibility than Danielson? Jericho? The Young Bucks? No. It had to be him. From a talent perspective, it pretty much had to be him. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. Maybe Claudio. All right? Everybody else is a fucking knucklehead. You want Moxley making these decisions? You want Eddie Kingston making these decisions? No. It had to be Danielson. He shouldn't be alone in this, though. It should be somebody from talent relations. And assume that he's in talent relations in some way. But I'm looking at this thing and saying it's not that big a deal. I'm glad for the transparency more than anything. But let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, Daddy.